We shall crack on. Our first speaker today is on behalf of the Liberal Democrats. His title is the Cabinet Member for Sustainable Development. He's here to talk about Baines Council and the Arts Development Plan. Would you please welcome to the stage Councillor Ben Stevens.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to address you all today. And welcome again to the Guildhall. As the representative of the council here, I get to welcome you properly to the venue, which is nice. Sustainable development, as he just said, is my brief, and it's a quite wide brief. It includes economic development, regeneration, skills, employability, tourism, heritage, culture, and the arts. So it's quite good. I studied English literature at Bath Spa. That's what brought me to Bath, and I did that because I wanted to be a director. I enjoyed thinking creatively, I enjoyed building a vision, I enjoyed trying to make that vision happen, and then I eventually enjoyed seeing it actually happen. And that's what I loved doing then, and it's weirdly what I've ended up doing on the council in a funny sort of way. I don't know if it was my own megalomania that drove me to directing and then bred a councillor, or whether being a director bred the megalomania and then I ended up being a politician. We'll leave that for a debate, but that's different. I set up a student theatre company while I was studying, and although we thoroughly resisted being called a student theatre company, obviously, we were very professional, and we did shows up at Bath Spa. We took a show up to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and also to a theatre festival in Paris. And I've loved theatre for ages. I was in a student production of Les Mis at school, and I played Marius, and it was the first thing I'd ever done on stage, but it was awesome. So that's what drew me to the theatre. I was amazed by how much I learnt over the years that I was involved in the theatre. I think it's something that's really undervalued, actually, is that most people who end up doing things in theatre are doing it voluntarily. They've got other jobs as well, and the skills that they can pick up from their other jobs end up benefiting the wider workforce as well. You can learn really useful things, so actors learn people skills, spatial awareness, narrative form, directors learn logistics, budgeting, finance, leadership skills, and writers learn not to kill directors and producers who want another rewrite and another rewrite. And you can also learn other things that are less useful, like you have to be a real masochist to drive to Paris in a 4-car convoy with one map, but that's also another story. We know that the arts currently contribute £5.9 billion worth of gross value added to the UK economy. We know that £856 million per year is spent by tourists who have come to the UK specifically for the arts. Across England, the performing arts was responsible for 32,700 full-time equivalent jobs in 2010. Here in Baines, we know the creative industries are now worth somewhere in the region of £800 million, worth more than tourism heritage. Cultural activities create over 6,000 jobs in the local economy, and the economic value of culture is at least £157 million every year. And you're all part of that, so you can feel great about that. But I haven't even touched on the fact so far that theatre is one of the most emotionally immersive, captivating art forms. And all of that, combined with everything I've already said, highlights to me why we must make sure that theatre survives and thrives. We're in tough times, and that's become the ultimate political cliche. And sadly, it's true. Despite the fact the economy is growing, times will continue to be difficult. And if the theatre is to survive, as I believe it must, then we need to keep theatre relevant and new. And that's why I'm pleased to be here and be part of this conversation about how we can make sure that Bath and the theatre scene in Bath matters. So briefly, I'm going to indulge myself because I get to speak about theatre a lot less than I would like to, and I'm going to throw in some thoughts about theatre adapted from some blog posts I wrote ages ago. In about 1640, the French philosopher René Descartes was having an existential crisis. He wanted to be sure that he still existed. How could he know for sure that he was still in the world? And as I'm sure we're all aware, he came up with the famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am." Now, discounting West End theatre that basically existed in its own bubble, the theatre has seen a sharp decline in audience figures, and that's put us in a similar existential crisis. How can we be sure that we still exist? How can we make sure that theatre is still relevant? I think, therefore I am. And the phrase carries an assumption that if we stop thinking, we stop existing. I found it interesting that in order to exist fully on stage, an actor needs to think. A thinking and studious actor is able to engage fully with other actors and characters on the stage. He's able to exist to an audience. If he's not thinking and engaging, the audience switch off and he ceases to exist, the character ceases to exist. He has to be both the character and the actor, outwardly playing a role and inwardly interrogating the performance. And that same duality, I think, needs to be true for a whole company, constantly looking inward and outward, looking at the world around them and responding, looking at the company itself and interrogating it about the art form. And there are three key areas that I'd like to highlight that I think we should be thinking about. We need to think about why we do what we do. We need to think collaboratively, and we need to think innovatively. So taking each in turn, this needs to think why. Why do we do what we do? And I suspect that for, like me, many of you in the room, it's not about becoming rich or making a living out of it. Granted, that would be nice. For me, the arts are about producing something creatively brilliant, culturally and politically relevant, and interesting to watch. And yeah, right now I can afford to be idealistic because I'm standing behind a podium and I wear the badge of a politician now. But the key point remains. You have to find your own reasons for doing what you do and interrogate yourself about why. And there's no doubt it's harder in this climate to produce works of art, but if you have a clear set of aims and intentions and something personally important to work for, it'll act as that beacon that you can cling to when things get difficult. Theatre needs to think collaboratively, and this partly comes from my own artistic preferences because I've always loved cross-discipline work. It's something I enjoyed creating, knitting together live film, music, painting, sculpture, dancers and actors to create something complete and all-encompassing. And when you feel that constructive collaboration with another artistic mind, the buzz you get is brilliant. A really good partnership is robust, a frank exchange, knocking the rough edges off each other's ideas. And we shouldn't stop with arts organisations either. I'm the trustee of the charity The Golden Oldies, which uses singing to improve the well-being of elderly people. It's a great collaboration between the arts and healthcare professionals. Just yesterday, I met up with the new director of Mentoring Plus, who I know many of you will know from his time at The Egg. And that's a charity that works with vulnerable young people. They want to collaborate with arts organisations, and we should seize those opportunities as well. Theatre needs to think innovatively. Find something new, think creatively. Clearly, when money's short, we find ways of doing things more cheaply so that we don't have to spend all our money. But beyond that, we're supposed to be the creative industries. So don't fall into the trap of doing something that's easy. When I was at university, I used to get so frustrated with the praise heaped on people who had copied, dance move by dance move, the DVD of a musical. Where's the artistic merit in that? And I know I'm preaching to the choir because we know that there are so many innovative companies that already exist in Bath. But because theatre is a powerful tool, and has been for thousands of years, my fear is that if it doesn't think and doesn't adapt, then theatre will continue to decline and eventually die out, and if not completely, then certainly as a viable organ of change and reflection. If we stop thinking, if we're apathetic towards society, then we cease to exist. We lose our ability and our right to comment. We lose touch with society, and our theatre becomes dead, devoid of life and truth. Earlier last year, I went to see the world premiere of the latest incarnation of Einstein on the Beach, and without getting too fanboy about it, it was quite simply the greatest thing I'd ever seen on Earth. It was a beautiful meld of modern theatre and minimalist opera between the composer Philip Glass and the director Robert Wilson. It was collaborative, it was innovative, and it was well thought through. And reading up on it afterwards, I was struck by the fact that the partnership wasn't an easy ride, and the really worthwhile ones never are, but it underlines the value of thinking why we're doing things, thinking collaboratively, and thinking innovatively. None of this is all that new, but the recession forces it out of us. I think of the great work that's still managed to be produced in this recession, and think of the great work that was done during the Thatcher recession and before. The other day, the BBC did a series of short interviews with some of the movers and shakers as they were coming out of the UK Theatre Awards, and the Deputy Artistic Director of the RSC summed up the state of British theatre saying, "British theatre is in a pretty healthy state, particularly artistically. Austere times can sometimes put a fire in one's belly, and I think that's happened. There are some great new voices coming through, and there's political bite to some of our work. At the same time, it's been a very tough year." And I suspect, looking around the room here, that there's the same sense of optimism here. You're in good health. It's going to be difficult, but you're in good health. It really is the political cliche of the time, but these are tough times for the council. And sadly, the arts isn't going to be a priority spend for a council that has to make huge cuts. And as many of you know, the council has changed recently the way we do arts funding, moving from a grants-based system to a procurement system. And this change was partly to bring us in line with nationally accepted practices, but primarily it was about introducing transparency into the system for the local taxpayer and for the arts community. The taxpayer can be confident their money is being spent on achieving specific objectives set out in each tender document, and the arts community have a better idea of what pots of money are available, what they're bidding for, and why they did, or crucially didn't, get the money. In theory, it opens up what I think had been a relatively closed shop. Alongside that, the Council put out a new arts development strategy, which, after listening to the arts community, was withdrawn because, let's be honest, for those of you who read it, it wasn't fit for purpose. What we'll be working on over the next few months is a broader strategy, taking in the arts development, taking in the cultural strategy and the event strategy, and really painting a picture about the cultural scene that we want to have here in Baines. Now, unfortunately, without that strategy, we've got more transparency for the taxpayer, but it's even more cloudy for the arts organisations. And that's, frankly, deeply regrettable. But we're only halfway through the process. This is going to be a confusing year for arts funding as we sort all these strategies out. But over the coming months, the Council will be consulting with the arts community on what you want from the cultural strategy and what you want from the arts development team, what you want from the Council to make your lives easier. I hope you'll bear with us as we untangle those questions, and I hope you'll engage with the process, because at the end of it, I think we'll end up with a much improved system. So to sum up, I hope you know I'm a friend of the theatre. I hope that over the next couple of years, you'll see that friendly influence on council decisions. On a very small scale, I've been sat where some of you are. I've filled in the Arts Council application forms and, of course, been rejected. So I'll do my absolute best to protect the arts budgets. I'll work with the theatrical community to try and create a transparent, navigable process for bidding for arts funds. In return, I would encourage you to think about your art, think collaboratively, think innovatively, but above all, think hard about what you do, because that's the best way to ensure that your theatre truly matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Stevens. Are you happy to take questions from the floor? Do we have any questions at all? If we can just get the microphone to this gentleman down here. Thank you, Phil. Phil's going to be running around now like Usain Bolt.
Hi, my name's Tony Cllr. I'm a multidiscipline artist and writer. As far as I'm concerned, funding isn't necessary to theatre anymore. I introduced back in 1986 a new form of production that cuts production costs by 99% and sets up a new illusion of a script, not with actors and music and dance and all that, but illusion of literature and fine art, so you exhibit a script instead of performing it. The idea of the performed script is as old as the hills. It goes back 2,600 years to Aeschylus and is the one idea the mass ranks of theatre personnel have had for script dramatization for the whole course of their existence since Shakespeare revived it in about 1580, and everybody else copied it, and then the film business copied that, and the television business copied that, and the radio business copied that. So the whole history of theatre, film, television, and radio is a history of copies of Aeschylus's ideas. Well, now the concept of a script in exhibition opens up the possibility of a new cultural sector, writers as exhibiting artists instead of performed artists, and that would provide something in the region of 3,000 new script opportunities, commission opportunities.
Sorry, can I ask, do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. He's part of the past, I'm part of the future. I'm just telling him what's going to happen. A new cultural sector could arise in this country on the basis of scripts in exhibition.
Well, thank you very much. Right. Because we have a very tight schedule, if you don't have a direct question for Councillor Stevens, we will have to move on. Any questions for Councillor Stevens whilst he is still with us on the stage?
I've done a good job.
Look, you've satisfied